The one place in this whole cattle thing where there's lots of value right now, or relatively good value, is on the forage side. We've sort of, in a long-term, more fundamental sense, really changed the value of forage relative to grain, or in the face of higher grain prices. So forage offers considerable opportunity that it has not in the past. We've increased all crop values in the U.S., driven largely by the increased demand for corn, but all of our major crop prices. So in the areas, obviously in the Midwest, where in our main crop growing areas, forage has a hard time competing in that area. And what we think is happening, the cattle numbers show it, and eventually we'll have the data on land use and so on, is that we're probably removing some pasture and hay acres out of some of those crop intensive areas, and we're going to shift cattle production, at least the forage based cattle production, more towards the drier part of the country, into the Great Plains and the Rocky Mountain region. Certainly there will be a lot of demand for wheat. In fact, again, our wheat's in very poor shape this winter, but already producers are considering that if they do manage to keep some wheat, if it survives into the spring, many of them already, I think, have seriously have largely decided that its forage value probably outweighs its grain value. And a year ago we did the same thing. Although we had a pretty good wheat crop that year, a lot of that wheat was used to make hay, for grazing, and then to make hay, and that proved to be very helpful during this last year of drought. And so the forage value of that wheat is pretty high. I've told producers for many months, and I think it's still true, the production challenges are really the heart of the issue for cattle producers. If you can produce something, and more importantly, if you can manage the cost of that production to the best of your ability, marketing is not your challenge. If you have something to sell, our markets are strong, the numbers are so tight that it suggests we're going to have pretty strong markets for pretty much all classes of cattle, certainly feeder cattle. And so marketing is not your issue. You got to concentrate on the production side. With respect to the drought and the continuing drought, and then what happens eventually when we move past that and start recovery, it's one of the continuing challenges for producers is this, making the decision when you have to liquidate some more animals. If the drought conditions persist, we're going to face another big round of liquidation, and that's something that's very difficult for producers. But one of the things that I try to remind them is that ultimately surviving a drought is a business issue, not a matter of how many cows you have. And so you can eventually just sink so much money into trying to preserve cows, to have cows at the end of a drought, that you really have no business left. And the alternative is to go ahead and make that decision, liquidate the cows, and preserve some equity, some financial position, so that you have something left to rebuild with. And if we face another round of liquidation, that'll be a key issue for producers, to make that decision in a timely way. I think what we're seeing is the cattle business, in a very broad sense, the whole industry is kind of changing the way it does business with respect to high grain prices, the role of forage versus grain in the industry. And so yes, we have ongoing programs to look at that, and to show producers that really there's a wider range of opportunities at both the cow-calf and stocker level in particular, in terms of utilizing forage. And that's going to be, it's something that hasn't really existed. Our cattle industry that we know today evolved over many years of very cheap corn, and that had a big influence on the way the industry was structured. Now we don't have that. I don't think we're going to have that in the future, and so we're going to go back and see the ruminant basis of this industry come back to play in terms of the cattle industry's ability to utilize forage resources that other species cannot utilize. Cheap grain made forage cheap for a lot of years. Now we don't have that, so forage is worth more. And so there's more opportunities, there's really more potential return to forage-based resources, pastures and so on, today than there has been in a long time. And so it opens up a whole new world of opportunities for producers who recognize that, make the changes to capture that value, and really it's probably easier to capture that value today than it has been for a long time.
Excellent. Are there other comments you'd like to make, or perhaps questions I didn't ask that I should make?
I don't think so.
Excellent.
I think you covered it.
Okay.
You're